Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Genes.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the cost of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Genes will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Genes swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Genes, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon-Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and producer of this podcast. How are you today, Julie?
I am fine, Richard, and you?
I'm doing great. You know, I spent my very first night in a hotel in like 2 years. I haven't gone anywhere. I've lived like a hermit through COVID. And
where'd you go?
We went out to Temecula, which is only about an hour and a half away from where we live.
Oh, yeah, I know Temecula.
Yeah, and we just went.
Not in a good way.
We went
Sorry.
wine tasting.
Oh, cool.
And we stayed at a place that had a pool, and I realized how much I loved and missed being able to jump in a pool when it's hot. It was just so refreshing, and it did my soul a lot of good to be away for a couple of days, and I'm hoping to do it even more so now.
Yeah.
Just getting my feet wet, literally. But,
sure.
And, drank some wine and brought some bottles home and got to taste stuff. And so that was just, it felt like a real human being again,
Do you drink red or white?
Mostly red, but I don't mind like a Sauvignon Blanc when it's really hot out.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I like a Sauv Blanc.
But I'm not a
the Aussies say.
Chardonnay fan. Like, I don't know why, but the white wines and like the champagnes always give me a headache.
Yeah.
But
That's funny because the red wines give me a headache.
really, yeah.
So the two of us make a whole.
So you and I could go out drinking wine together, and we would never.
I'll have all the white, and you can have all the red.
Exactly.
Perfect.
There's be plenty to go around.
Let's do it.
I love it. What's happening in DNA news, Julie?
Oh, well, let me see what is happening in DNA news. Oh, this is interesting. So there's a certain contingency that has been just coming at Ancestry and complaining because Ancestry doesn't have a chromosome browser, which... So yeah, Ancestry is good for everything, but it does not have a chromosome browser. You usually have to upload your raw data to an external site that does have a chromosome browser. But you can't look at the chromosomes of your Ancestry matches unless they also upload it there.
Right. Everybody has to do it. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So word came down the pike that Ancestry has acquired a company called Geniat, which has a chromosome browser.
Oh.
Now, it's not clear as to whether or not they will kind of combine the two, like use that, or whether it might be a special, like
a separate
for
business.
an extra cost addition to, like on Ancestry, you can pay a little extra to have access to newspapers.com and Fold 3 and various other extra, and of course I have access to them all because I need them all. But yeah, that will be interesting. And I will say, while I understand the attraction of a chromosome browser, the only time a chromosome browser for me has ever been of real use in finding family was when it came to the X chromosome. Because there are certain rules that come with the passing down of the X chromosome. So, for instance, if two women share an entire X chromosome, that means they share a father.
Right.
So that's, and there are a couple other less obvious uses for it too.
Refresh my memory though, because didn't you talk at one point about something that was it a chromosome browser where it was color coded and someone had made this thing? It was color coded. It was very easy to read that way.
DNA Painter, I think you're referring to.
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
but that's not that's not a chromosome browser, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
it is. And what you can do is upload. Yes, you can upload from other companies that have chromosome browsers.
I see. Okay.
that have or that break down the chromosomes, and you can actually. I mean, here's the thing: you can see it on the platform, the original platform, if they have a chromosome browser, but DNA Painter has a lot of other extra things you can do with that, and also it's very comprehensive. Like you can color code and what have you.
I liken it to you can watch a movie on your computer using QuickTime plugin, or you can have like Final Cut Pro where you would have all the bells and whistles and you could edit it and do all these different things to it, right?
Yes.
All right, good.
That's a good analogy.
I'm just trying to understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, and also DNA Painter. I use DNA Painter mostly for the what are the odds, because that's. I mean, and I am so reliant on the what are the odds aspect. Once I start building a tree and have figured out where people matches fit. I can't wait to start a Watto tree because that'll really narrow down the possibilities of where the client's parent fits.
Right, right.
In a much better way than me trying to figure out and hurting my head.
Well, my guess is that if Ancestry has bought this company, that they will offer this as an extra add-on, like you said, like a paid add-on. And I'm sure it will be an extra paid add-on only because every time I get an email from Ancestry, they're like, click on this, so you have a new hint, or you have a new this, or a new story on some relative, and I click on it, and in order to see it, I have to sign up for a membership.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, definitely. But just a basic membership. And I will say a basic membership to Ancestry is not that expensive if you're just a hobbyist genealogist. But yeah, it adds up if you need all the bells and whistles, certainly.
I actually had I guess a relative somewhere in England who contacted me through Ancestry recently, and he was asking me. He said that I was the highest match in his DNA profile. Yeah,
he's been contacting me too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's been contacting me, but he doesn't. It's a very slow process when you're talking through Ancestry. And you give just one word answers to each other.
Right.
It takes a long time to get to the point.
Right.
What he's trying to do is figure out, I think it's your Boyle line.
Yes.
Is it Boyle?
Yes.
Yes. And he knows that he is from the Boyle line, and from Ireland, but he doesn't know how, and he wants to figure out how the two of you connect.
Right.
And so I guess he contacted you after I wasn't giving him good enough answers.
And we'll just tell our listeners the reason he contacted Julie was because Julie manages my account, so therefore she has access to everything that about my life that
Yes, everything.
She can see my entire line.
Yes,
But anyway,
I can
he
indeed.
did. It was sort of like playing cards. He's like, "Do you have any, Joseph boils in your tree? Do you have any?" I'm like, "Yes." And then it was like, "Go fish."
Yeah. Here's the thing. Can you see his tree?
No.
Right. So if he really wants to know, he needs to share his tree with you.
I see.
So that I can see if I can actually figure out the connection. We know very little about the Boyles before they went to Canada. Did they go to Canada?
No, they were all from
Okay.
Ireland. But what was
Right, but
interesting?
didn't they go to Canada or they went straight to the
No,
US?
because on my paternal side, they came from Newfoundland, but a lot of them came to the States. Maybe some of them went to Canada. I'm not sure. But what the funny thing is, and this Irish Catholic family, that every single generation has the same names in them. There's a Daniel, and then there's a Joseph,
Yeah.
and there's
yeah.
a James.
Yes.
So like every one of these daughters had like 9 children, and in every generation are the same names. I don't know how you keep it separate, Julie, because when I look at it,
It hurts your head.
yeah, it does.
Yeah. You have to really look at dates and look at it. And it's so easy to get one confused for the other. And then years later, you go back and realize, wait, this person wasn't even born when that other person, just because the name's confused.
This reminds me of one of the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes that they do every year at Halloween. Like all these zombies came up out of the ground, out of the graveyard, and wreaked havoc on Springfield. And at the end, when they were all going back into their graves, there was somebody named John Smith trying to get back into a grave, and he goes, and there are two guys trying to get in the same grave, and he goes, "Oh wait, you're John Smith, 1662? Oh, no, I'm 1743."
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Right?
Oh, that is such a great genealogy joke.
There you go.
I have a quick trenches case.
Oh yeah.
So I have this client, we would call her Mandy, and my job was to find her mother, and I had a lot of non-identifying information, and I found her. I figured out who it was. And everything added up. It was another, gosh, I'm getting so many of these lately. It was another where there was a disconnect in NPE a little further up. So the name of a grandfather wasn't in the DNA, but everything else was. And so there must have been an NPE, but that's a whole other thing.
Oh my God.
Anyway, but because of most of the DNA that matched perfectly, plus the non-ID was exact, I figured out who the mother was. So let's say the mother's name was Olive Bjorgi.
Olive Bjorgi. Okay.
Olive Bjorgi, yes. The women are olives now. It said the mother's name was Olive Bjorgi. So I figured it out, and I found her Facebook page and all these. And then I contacted Mandy and said, okay, get on the phone with me. Let's get on Ancestry together, and I'm going to talk you through what I've discovered. So we do that, and I get to where I've connected her to who I believe is her mother. And I said, and this lady, Olive Bjorgi, is your mother. And she went, oh, that's so weird. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, well, I've heard that name before. And I said, what are you talking about? So she had registered, there's this platform called adopted.com. I think it's adopted.com.
Okay.
That I registered at years ago when I was looking for my father. Where people who are looking for people can register. Biological parents as well as adoptees. And she had done that, and she had gotten a hit to, like they had said, we have a 99% match or something like that for you. And it was that same name. And she, I guess, plugged in that name to Facebook, and whichever person came up that had that name was not the right person, and it was clear that I wouldn't be that wasn't her mother.
Yes,
it could have been a racial difference or something, and so she thought it was a scam. When in actuality, what she'd probably just another Olive Bjorgi, believe it or not, was on Facebook. But yeah, she had been looking for her 3 years ago.
Oh, weird.
So I proceed to reach out to her, and I can't find her. She's on Facebook. I have messaged her. I have friend requested her on Facebook. She obviously doesn't go on Facebook because she doesn't appear to have. She certainly hasn't seen my messages.
Because it tells you if they've been read, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But then also all of the proprietary search engines that I have access to that give you the most up-to-date information that is available.
Yeah.
None of those work.
Could she have passed away?
She could have, so I have one hint in that her mother, the biological mother's mother, died earlier this year, and in her obituary, it has her living in a different place than where she had been living all those other years.
I see. So in other words, she was alive at the time that her mother died.
Yes, she was alive. I don't think all of those search engines have caught up with her new address and her new. Even the phone numbers don't work. There's one that somebody answered. She's like, "No, I don't know who that is." I was like, "Okay, I'm so sorry." So then I keep going down the list, and then I come back to her again, and I'm like, "So just so you know, this isn't a sales call. If you really are her, there's somebody looking for you, and I think you're looking for her." She's like, "It's not me." And I'm like, "Well, how long have you had this phone number?" And she says, "Years." So that is a question mark.
It's funny because you can't always rely on them being honest either, because they don't know what you're calling for. And
right, which is why I gave as much information that somebody, if you gave up a child for adoption and have actually actively looked for them,
yes,
it would all make sense.
Yes, this call might not be that much of a surprise. You would certainly go.
Well, and also, by the way, in the registry, I looked at the adopted.com registry, and it had her address and phone number at the time, both of which don't work anymore, and that was only 3 years ago.
Okay.
But anyway, so this was one of the few that I feel, because I knew she was looking for her, I felt comfortable just calling and saying, "Guess what? You're going to be so happy to hear this." But instead, we had to write a letter.
It still hasn't been resolved? It hasn't been resolved.
It still hasn't been resolved. It's been 2 weeks.
Wow.
It's so frustrating. So we ended up writing a letter, or I had the client write a letter, and I'm sending it to the address that is coming up for everybody in the family, for like her brother and her mother. Like, it seems like maybe it's a property that has been owned, that has been in the family for quite a while.
I see. Yeah.
So hopefully it will get to her, if it can get to her.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say this, because we're so conditioned now that you can pretty much find anybody by just Google
Especially
searching,
me.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I
know all the tricks.
Yeah.
And it's so weird that I can't find her.
And I had this conversation with a friend of mine last night. I've known this friend since high school, and he was talking about how he was trying to find somebody he knew in high school, and that he had Google searched, and that name had only come up from maybe 8 or 9 years ago. Like, that was the last trace. And he thought, well, maybe they passed on.
Yeah.
And he couldn't find anything in obituaries and all that. And then it sort of hit him that he thinks, and he's not sure, but he thinks that person has transitioned and changed sex. So in other words, and so that person who he knew as a male may no longer be a male.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so if you're searching for that name, there may not be.
It may not exist anymore.
Right.
Interesting. That is a really interesting.
Yeah.
I have had one case where I had a client who was trans.
I think you might have mentioned that. This sounds familiar.
And I was nervous about when I found the mother as to how to handle that.
Right.
Because I didn't,
she gave birth to a daughter or to a girl,
exactly.
a female.
Precisely. And I didn't know how the mother would react. And it ended up being great. Yeah. I was not the one, I ended up not being the one to contact her. It was done. So my client, he ended up talking to one of his sisters. And they finished the whole thing off.
Well, interestingly, just on a side note, just because of the Facebook, and you can know so much more about your old school chums' lives than you would ever know normally.
Or want to.
But actually, I have at least 3 people I knew, not necessarily were friends with, but just knew they were in my class or whatever in high school, who have children who have transitioned. And you can see it on their Facebook page. And it
I
seems
have
to me that all
many,
three
too.
are very accepting of it, at least from
Yes.
the way they present
Yes.
it, and it's wonderful that they do.
You know, I have this generation they're kind of saying, you know what, we are who we are and we're not going to be ashamed of it and you can't shame us.
Right.
And we've been feeling this for years and we've been pushed down and this generation is not going to let that happen.
Right.
Should we take a break?
Let's take a break.
All right.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
Okay, we're back. This week we are starting the Epic Odyssey sooner because it's a long one.
Yeah, right.
And it's only the first part.
We got to make room.
Yes, we got to make room. Got to make room for everybody's voice. So this is Brian Stanton, who I somehow became connected with, and we realized we have a lot of mutual friends. He's an LA actor, and years ago he wrote a play called Blank about his search for his biological parents. And during COVID, he turned it into a film that he made at home with his wife.
That is so cool.
And he sent me a copy of it, a press copy, because now I'm getting press things. And loved watching it, had to talk to him about it. And we had a great conversation. And here is the first half of that conversation. Hi, guys. I have on the line Brian Stanton, who is a new friend. We know each other. Well, we don't know each other, but we have discovered that we are both actors, obviously, and we know a lot of the same theater people.
I know, it's amazing, Julie, and thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. We have all these friends in common, and the fact that you're involved in this, DNA searching world, and you're a theater actor in LA, and we have so many friends in common. It's amazing we haven't met, but
it's crazy, isn't it?
I know.
I came across your I guess your Facebook page or something, as I'm always doing, and I don't remember even what I saw, but I saw the term Ghost Kingdom, and I kind of did a deep dive into that and realized that that is the name of your film that you have been making during COVID, and it has to do with your adoption search.
Yes. So I guess I'll just try to give you the nuts and bolts of my story, and then feel free to interrupt anytime if you want to dive deeper, or if you need a clarification, because you know how crazy and confusing our stories can be sometimes. So I was born, adopted, and raised in Kansas City. My adoptive parents, this story has changed. I think I was in foster care for a few months. I don't really know how long, but nonetheless, I was pretty much adopted as a baby, so pretty much right away.
What do you mean by the story has changed?
How long I was in foster care. It's gone from 10 days I had a foster mother, to 2 months, to 3 months, to 4 months. And yeah, I just never got a straight story from my adoptive mother. And now that I've been involved in the adoption world, it would be amazing to meet the woman who took care of me during that time. But I don't know if she's even alive anymore. But, anyway, so there was, I always knew that I was adopted. My parents were honest with me from the very beginning with that. Mm-hmm. And my adoptive mother, I'm going to use qualifications. I'm so sorry if I'm offending anyone, but just to avoid confusion,
Sure.
For my parents, I will say adoptive mother and adoptive father. And for my biological parents, I will say birth mother and birth father. My adoptive mother always told me that I was always interested and always asking about who my birth mother was, who she is and where she is, where she came from. And I do at a certain point remember always being curious. But she said I was even asking when I was young. Mm-hmm. So I've always had that desire to know who my birth mother is.
Yeah.
When I was 23 years old, I'll probably date myself during this story. I was home for Christmas. I came out to Los Angeles and went to Cal Arts. And I came home for Christmas, and I brought it up again to my mother, and she said, hold on, I'll be right back. And she comes back with this envelope that had my original birth certificate in it.
What?
And this
had that?
Yes. She had it for a long time.
Weird.
She had it. And along with that original birth certificate, which I'll get to in a second because it's crazy that she had it.
It is crazy.
She also had like this sheet of paper where she had done some research a long time ago and had information written down.
Interesting.
So I was born. So as you know, Kansas City sits on the border of both Kansas and Missouri.
Yes.
I was born on the Missouri side, which at that time, up until 2 years ago, was a very closed adoption state. You know, they all birth records were sealed, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. However, Kansas has always been open, never closed, anything like that. So it's kind of wild that the city sits on that.
Wait, Kansas has always been open?
There are two states, and it's Kansas and I believe Alaska.
Oh, okay. All right.
Have always been open.
Okay.
My adoptive mother knew someone had some kind of contact, and that angel made a copy of my original birth certificate and gave it to my mom.
Oh, wow. There's someone who could lose their job.
I think she had it when I was like 10 years old. I really don't know. She had it for a long time. And she even told me she was waiting for the right time, you know. But when is the right time? We don't know the right time.
I mean, you were regularly asking, so to me that tells me that that would be the right time. But
yeah, but nonetheless, she gave it to me, and she was very supportive. So I'm so grateful for that, and for her for this. And it had my birth mother's name on it, right there, right there. The father's name was blank and my name was blank, which 10, 11 years after this point, I will have written a play called Blank, which refers to that namespace. And of course, metaphorically, the empty space that we feel in us and all that. But
all of the things, yes.
There was a point where I told her, basically my adoptive mother said, whenever you're ready. Actually, Julie, she was like, well, let's call her. Oh, wow. She did. So she called her, and I was kind of freaking out, and I was torn because, yes, I was ready, but now it's real.
Wait,
right?
She called her with you right there?
Yes, I was in the kitchen. My sister and I were in the kitchen with her. There's a whole scene in my play Blank about this.
I'm literally the hair is standing up on my head.
So you can imagine.
Well, I can't.
Yeah,
wow. Which I mean is cool that your mom was so
very forward about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know how.
Yeah. My mother, my adoptive mother, and we sadly lost her last October, almost a year ago. Last September, almost a year ago. Thank you. But she was a very stubborn Italian woman, and when she got her mind on something, she went. And so she wanted to call her, and I was like, yes, call her. No, don't call her. You know that whole push-pull thing that we adoptees can do? Like, yes, I want you. Nah, just stay back.
It's hard to make
that kind of a thing.
It's hard to make a solid decision about anything.
Oh, my gosh, anything. You're so right, Julie. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I'm so indecisive in my life. But anyway, anyway, she called her, and I'm freaking out. A young boy answers the phone and says that his mother is not home right now, but will be home later. And my mom asked where she was, and he said work. And she's like, can I get a hold of her at work? And he's like, well, she works at our local library.
Mom needs my job.
I know. Yeah, right.
Jeez.
Yes.
Wow.
Anyway, she finally said, is this her son? And he said, yes. And she said, what's your name? Oh. And he said, my name is Brian.
Whoa.
Yes. So
that's confusing. Okay.
Turns out I have a half brother named Brian.
I bet that happens a lot.
It happens a lot.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
So side note,
Yes.
Was it on purpose? Did your mother, is there anything?
No, she didn't know.
She didn't know. Okay.
She did not know my name was Brian.
All right. Fair enough.
That kind of synchronicity, the synchronicity in adoption is really incredible.
It's nutty. Yeah. Absolutely.
Anyway, my mother ends the phone call and tells me, what she's discovered. And I was kind of freaking out. And I said, don't know if I'm ready yet.
Yeah.
I thought I was ready, but I may need to wait.
Yeah.
And
there's some processing to do.
A lot.
Yeah.
And I'm still processing, right, Julie? I mean, we never stop processing.
Of course. But if you have this information just suddenly, I don't know, I'm just not to make this about me, but I will. I did that. My parents were supportive in that they weren't not supportive.
Yes.
They always knew I was going to do it. And they probably didn't love that idea just for their own reasons, but knew that I was going to do it. And I think deep down knew that I had a right to do it. But they really weren't involved until after I found my mother. And they were very lovely with her when I did find her.
Great.
But when I had that information, I didn't want to do it with anybody else around. You know what I mean? I wanted to. In fact, I called my biological mother in the middle of the night when everybody else was asleep, so that nobody would be. You know what I mean? It's private. It's scary. Yes.
We also feel vulnerable. A little guilty. Yeah. We feel guilty.
Oh, absolutely. So Mom had talked to your half brother, and you said, actually, I don't think I'm ready for this.
Yes, but that only lasted a few weeks. So
right. It could be an hour, it could be a year.
Right.
Just not. Really.
I came back out to California and I called up my mom and said, "Mom, I'm ready." And she said, "Okay, here's what I'll do. I'll contact her and I'll say, why don't you write him a letter?" So she was basically. Let me go back.
Okay.
So she said, "Okay, I'll get in touch with her." She calls and contacts my birth mother.
Uh-huh.
And they speak, and my birth mother was thrilled.
Okay.
She's been wanting to get in touch with me for years, but was scared to do so.
Right.
And she's like, "What, can I call him? Do I see him?" And my mom suggested that she just simply write me a letter. That's what she did. And I got a letter. I was on a break in the middle of my 3-hour acting lab. And I got the letter and I just saw it and I saw her handwriting and I started crying. I started crying right away. Yeah. And my classmates were there for me and they said, and of course my teacher, she's like,
use it.
Yes, use it. If you want to read this for all of us, do it. But if you want to go off on your own, that's fine, whatever. Yeah. So I went off on my own. And I read the letter. And what she said was that she was 16 years old and had been gang raped at a party.
Okay.
At his high school party.
Is that the term she used?
She said raped. I don't have it in front of me right now, but yes, that's what pops out of my memory.
Wow. Okay.
Because she eventually told me it was 3 boys who were on the football team.
Okay.
Kind of the typical story that you still unfortunately hear today.
Sure.
And so, that throws me into a whole identity crisis of a whirlwind, a whirlwind of a crisis there. But
was that something that had ever crossed your mind?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, not at all. When you decide to search, it's a scary thing because you never know what you're going to find.
Absolutely.
So I cried on and off for about 24 hours, and I was dating a woman who is now my wife at the time, who was wonderful for me. She came all the way up to comfort me and, just kind of dealing with what all this means.
Yeah.
eventually, we end up talking on the phone. We end up emailing nonstop to each other. You know, the reunion process at the very beginning is just so honeymoon-like, right? Yes. Everything is so exciting, and you're telling each other about everything, and it was really happy. You know, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And so exciting. And then when I went back to Kansas City I think I was going back for my brother's graduation anyway, but we decided to meet in person. And it was, this is the toughest thing to process for us adoptees. She was extremely emotional.
Yeah.
And always wanted to touch me and hug me and couldn't take her hands off me. And it was very confusing for me.
Okay.
Because what we're told is that, oh, your mother loved you so much she gave you away.
Yeah.
Your mother loved you.
Right.
Your mother loved you so much. She made the best decision for you. And adoption is such a wonderful thing. And she gave you a home, a family. And as much as I love my adopted family, oh my gosh, they're amazing. And my brother and sister are my best friends. And I have a great life.
Right. Two things can be true. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. My desire to search had nothing to do with the love or lack of love that was given by an adopted family.
Gotcha.
Anyway, but we're told one narrative, and then here my mother, my birth mother, is saying, I didn't want to give you away. Looking back, I could have raised you. I could have done it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for whatever I've done to you. I'm so sorry. You know, and holding me and touching me. And I didn't know how to handle it. I suddenly became the adult and saying, I'm fine. Everything is fine. Don't worry about it. I've been very fortunate in my life.
Right.
You know, and
so
I felt I was comforting her.
Yes. Instantly you wanted to comfort her. Once again, the people pleaser.
We spent a couple hours in her house, and then her husband came home, and I met her husband, a fantastic human being. Mm-hmm. And I met one of my brothers at the time.
Okay.
And that was Brian.
Okay.
And so I have two half brothers through her.
Okay.
Anyway, then my adoptive mother started to become defensive because I was talking, communicating so much with my birth mother. And that's where I felt I had to comfort her too. So, there's that whole thing. It was so difficult. Yeah. And I didn't know how to really process it. And I was in no therapy, Julie, other than acting and acting class, right? And I didn't know anything about the whole support group world and this whole adoption foster huge world.
I didn't either until like 5 years ago.
Right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I did all of that stuff, the initial stuff with my mother completely on my own with no internet or anything. Yeah. And it was a strange thing to navigate.
Right. And looking back, like you and I looking back on it now, it's like, oh, okay, well, so much makes sense now. And it's anyway, so part of my therapy was writing, and I wrote a play called Blank, which was about this whole identity crisis, kind of the journey in search of identity and trying to fill in that blank on my birth certificate up until the point to where I meet my mother. And that was when things started to make sense to me. So I premiered it in Hollywood here of 2010, and then for the general public, and then I started performing for adoption support organizations, foster support organizations, and having conversations and Q&As with these people, with my peeps, my adopted brothers and sisters out there. That's when my play started making sense to me. And since my play made more sense to me then my whole experience started making sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's when I became more involved with support groups and all this whatnot. And, so, the birth mother, they say the birth mother resorts to when she goes into reunion, she can resort back to that time when she relinquished. And so the reason my birth mother was just so emotional is because she was 16 years old again.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's been proven that we tend to stop developing in certain ways at the exact age we are that an extreme trauma happens.
Right.
So that makes perfect sense.
So, and Julie, what I think is, and I'm not a therapist, but I cried nonstop. It would just hit me, like a waterfall. And I think I resorted to being a newborn.
Absolutely.
And we don't have language at that time.
Yes.
So none of it made sense to me. These foreign emotions, which I had no labels for, no experience for, it was just such a confusing. Yeah, you're right. It was such a confusing time. And now looking back on it, I wish I knew all this at that time. Yeah. Because I kind of pushed my birth mother away a little bit. And then she became really protective because that was emotional for her. So since then, she has kind of put the ball in my court as far as communication goes. Okay. As long as I'm the one reaching out, we talk, have a great relationship. We meet each other, have lunch, dinner in Kansas City. She actually came to my wedding. She's seen my play blank.
How was that for her?
It was actually great. This was before she kind of put the ball in my court when she saw it. We'd been in reunion for 12, maybe 13 years at this point. So she came, and this was so nerve-wracking. Oh my gosh. I've done a lot on stage, Julie, and this was probably the most nervous I've ever been performing for my birth mother.
I can imagine.
She was, and I'm sure it was extremely nerve-wracking for her. But so I before the show, I called my stage manager over and I said, so there is a woman and her husband sitting in the back row in the corner. That's my birth mother. I want you to give her these. And I gave her one of these, a small little plastic thing of Kleenex.
Okay.
I
didn't know what you were going to say.
Yeah. Watch it. Yeah. It's Xanax. No, I'm kidding. It was Kleenex.
Yeah.
And about, not even 5 minutes later, there's a knock on my door, and this is my stage manager, and she said she already has a whole box of her own, and gave the Kleenex right back to me. But afterwards, I use an alias in the play.
Yeah.
After the play, she actually in the lobby, when I was talking with a lot of people, she introduced herself as my birth mother.
Wow.
As the woman who is Beth in the play.
Huh.
So, which is huge for her because she still carries a lot of shame. It's very hard for her to talk about. And it seemed like we had made a lot of headway.
Yeah.
But like I said, now she's a little extra protective, and the ball is in my court, which is exhausting. I really wish she would reach out to me on her own more often.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've explained to her that I didn't know how I was feeling back then. It was very confusing. But now with this experience that I've had with the whole adoption foster support organizations and that whole world, I understand her situation more, and I understand my situation more.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right. Has she read The Girls Who Went Away? Do you know?
No, I doubt it.
You might want to send her a copy. I don't know.
I know. Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
I know. That's Ann Fessler, right? Ann Fessler is amazing.
Yes. Oh, amazing. In my work, when I talk to biological mothers and actually adoptees, the first thing I do is recommend that book. I tell adoptees, before I've found who they're looking for, I tell them to read that book. Because it's especially if we're going through this, I want them to have a chance to get inside the head of the woman who went through this.
Right.
And I think it's so important that we realize that there was trauma, everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
well put.
Interesting. Has the search for your father ever been a part of blank?
Okay.
Here we go.
No.
All right. Okay.
So right away, obviously, I was like, well, I don't want to meet my father. I don't want to have anything to do with him. There was that kind of anger and also denial that I don't come from that,
right.
All that. But, after being involved in support organizations and stuff like that, I realized what adoption has meant to me and what it means to me now and what my experience means to me, and that it is important for me to at least know who my father is for sure. Mm-hmm. And it was an event. It was an event that happened, a terrible, horrific, traumatic event.
Yep.
And we hope there's been evolution, right? So I had always kind of just peeked around at the name. She said there were 3 guys, but she thinks based on my looks, she knows which one it is.
Okay.
And he was currently in prison, which I later found out was for drug trafficking.
Okay.
And among a couple other things. But anyway, I had always looked up his name and tried to find his picture in the yearbook, all those little things that we do. But I didn't really start hardcore searching until right after blank, probably 2010 sometime.
Okay.
And I got a PI to look him up, and I got all this information. And I began reaching out to the family, doing the whole search thing. Most did not get back to me. One woman got back to me who is his daughter. Okay. And we created this amazing relationship, this amazing online relationship. Uh-huh. She was so wonderful, so accepting of me, and that that validation is incredible. That's what we all want.
Right?
Keely in the movie. Yes. I will use alias
I'm kind of obsessed with Keely a little bit.
Yeah, Keely was amazing.
Yeah.
So we'll use alias names. So she said, we said, well, we could do this sibling test, which is not conclusive. So we did a sibling test. And it came back a very low percentage. Anyway, so she said, well, if you want, we can get a hold of Dad and you could talk to him and blah, blah, blah. Yep. And that really freaked me out. I was happy to go through other people, because I wanted to do the Y chromosome DNA test with his brother or his father, who were both living, but they were pushing that they didn't want to have anything to do with me at all. Okay. Nothing. And I have my play got publicity, and the fact that I came from rape, that it scared the crap out of them, Yeah. Anyway, so, she actually ended up telling, this man who I refer to as Max in my movie at Ghost Kingdom. Mm-hmm. And he said that he was at the party that night and could definitely had sex with anyone that night, and I could definitely be his father. Is basically what he said.
Oh, he didn't remember that specific encounter?
Well, he did say it was. Yeah, after we spoke, it became a little more clear. He denies that it was forced, of course. Of course. And as I said in the film, I'll go to bat for my mom any day, but that's neither here nor there. That's not for me to decide. I just, want to know who my father is for sure. Mm-hmm. We actually spoke on the phone. He called me from prison. Mm-hmm. And we had emails, and he was excited about the prospect that I was possibly his son.
Sure.
It was amazing. And they'd seen pictures of me and they're like, yeah, you look like him. You look like me, and I was trying, Julie, talking to the warden to approve a test, and they denied it. And I'm like, okay, so I called the DNA lab and they're like, and I'm like, can we get hair samples? Can we do what can we do? Right.
Yeah.
And they said, well, what you can do is he can clip his fingernails. Yeah. And if they allow him to mail them to you, we can scrape DNA off of his fingernails.
Right.
And if we have enough DNA from that, then we'll use your swab, your cheek swab sample.
Right. I remember at this point in the movie, I was going to send you an email just entitled "Fingernails and Blood."
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So, yes, exactly. So that leads in. So I tell him, and he's like, fingernails? And he said, how about blood on a diabetic strip? And I'm like, what? You're kidding me. They're going to let you send me blood on a diabetic stick, but they won't let me send you a little test in there to swab your cheek? I don't.
So weird.
It's insane. And so I said, I send whatever you can. So I go to the mailbox one day, and sure enough, there are blood and fingernails.
Wow.
Right in the mail. I send it in, and he's not my father.
Crazy.
Now
is where we need to talk about. This is the point in the film that I thought it was over.
Yeah.
That scene, I had a visceral reaction to that scene.
Yeah.
Because I think it was a full minute of you having your own kind of breakdown, but I wasn't sure whether what kind of a breakdown it was, and I'm sure that's the point. So, kudos, good job for you.
Thank you. Yeah,
that was a spectacular scene.
Oh, thank you so much. This is a spoiler, by the way, so we can warn people. But
right, yeah, I guess I should.
It's I'm glad. I'm so happy you told me that, Julie, because I wanted it to be vague, whether I'm happy.
Oh, it's vague.
Elated. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Cool.
Oh, it's vague.
Cool.
I was on the edge of my seat. Like, what?
Okay.
Wait, what? Okay, is he happy? What? No, it was very, it was very effective.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much. That was the end. I mean, that marked a certain end to a chapter of everything that we thought we knew. My birth mother and I thought we knew.
Right.
It just wasn't.
All right, so that is the end of the first half of that conversation with Brian. He's really fun. Makes me laugh. So you can get information about where you can see it and more background information at Ghost Kingdom. That's AT Ghost Kingdom, not the at like in at.
Like on Twitter when you say at.
Yes, like on Twitter. Even though the logo does have a Twitter at on it, but to get to the website, type in AT Ghost Kingdom. So they're doing several screenings coming up in September. The first public screening is going to be September 25th at the Electric Lodge in Venice, California.
Cool.
At 7:00. And anyone can go to that and go to the website for tickets. And then there also Concerned United Birth Parents 2021 retreat in Marina Del Rey in October, I think. It's gonna be screening there, and it got nominated for, let me see, an official selection for the International Film Festival, Love Film Festival. Nominated as Best Feature, Best Screenplay, and Best Actor Brian Stanton. Good for Brian.
Well, a lot of us were sitting home during COVID, like binging Netflix. He was doing something creative and he was making work, and good for him. That's terrific.
Yes.
I'm so happy.
And I really enjoyed. I kept wanting to text him while I was watching it to say, "Oh my gosh, that was such a great move." You know what I mean? But it was great. So that was part 1. Thanks so much, Brian. We will have part 2 on episode 408.
Great. In the meantime, I am Richard Castle. You can go to my website, richardcastle.com, or you can follow me on the Twitter or Instagram at Castle Songs.
I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. You can follow me at the Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. Follow the podcast at CutOff Jeans Pod. Join the Facebook group. Follow me on Instagram, CutOff Jeans Podcast. And I have a TikTok page. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, when you find out, let me know, because I want to join it too, but I'm just,
Yeah, I don't necessarily like filming myself to do content, but I do these little headliner things that, like I did one of Brian this week, which I thought was really fun, and I can put those on there.
I see.
I'm just trying to keep up with the kids.
You know what's not hard to keep up with?
The truth.
And where is that, Julie?
The truth is in your jeans.